Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Follow Lead Podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to EBEBsolutions.com today and get your free energy audit. It will literally save you time and money. Today on the podcast, Trey Tucker. Trey is a friend of mine from the That Sounds Fun network. He is a counselor. He's just a good dude. You're going to absolutely love Trey. He's got a Southern accent. He's nailing the social media part of his life. Find him on Instagram, listen to this podcast, and really lean into the idea of what it means to be an authentic, vulnerable leader. Trey and I get into that and so much more. So now a quick word from our partners, and here's my conversation with Trey Tucker. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to have my new friend, fellow podcast network on the That Sounds Fun network, the legendary Trey Tucker. Trey, what's up, man?
Legend only in my own mind, if that. Sometimes the voices in my head tell me the complete opposite than legend. So yeah, I appreciate you trying to make me one, though.
Well, listen, dude, I got to be on your podcast recently, and I have seen your work all over the Instagram. You are a guy's therapist. You got the Rugged podcast. You're doing all these different things. So let me start from the macro, right? You initially came out of school with an MBA. You were not a therapist. You were not doing this kind of work. And since then, God has kind of pivoted you where you are. I'm curious, how would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
Going to the deep end right away.
I like to swing for the fences.
All right, no softball questions here. The calling, one of the things I feel so grateful for is that He has made my calling pretty much crystal clear, and He has let me walk in it. And I haven't met many people who have both of those. I think you're one of those people too. But for me, if the way that I would try to summarize it best, because I think there's probably 6 or 7 different sentences that would go with what He's sort of called me to do. But in one sentence, it's to make people know that they're valued and then help them become the best version of themselves. And that can obviously happen through counseling, but it's also happened in a bunch of different other ventures outside of anything related to a job title. And he's wired me so that I like to listen a whole lot more than I like to talk. And therefore, people, even from an early age, like I'm talking elementary school, people would just start telling me stuff that I didn't ask them to open up and share something personal, but they did. And then they would, sometime in middle school, I started noticing people came to me for advice, and I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? I didn't have any clue about calling and purpose at that point. I just knew people keep coming to me. So it kind of just stacked on from there. And I look back and realized, wow, this was a pretty neat story God's been weaving.
One of the things that's interesting to me is I think that there are a lot of business leaders who want to pivot in their career, and yet they look at the cost of what they've invested already, whether that be time or finances, and there's a giant fear to pivot, right? And so I'm curious, how did you know that I need to actually abandon what I had been working on for the last 6 years and shift for more education and lean in a little bit more? How do you know when it's time to make that shift?
You got to be a little crazy.
Is that your professional opinion?
That's my diagnosis of myself and anybody else who does it. No, I think you do have to have a little bit of let's go. Because there are always going to be reasons not to try to take that pivot or make that jump. And so if you're just looking for a reason not to do it, then maybe you don't need to do it anyway. Because anything that's worth doing is going to come with second guesses, maybe some naysayers, definitely some resistance. I think from a spiritual perspective, you're going to find pretty big resistance as you start moving closer to your calling and purpose. And so I think mine came mainly from a place of, if I don't do this, then I'm going to regret it and I'm going to stay empty. And I remember thinking people keep coming to me at this point before. So let me back up a little bit. I started in the business world, was not walking with God at that point, but I still had the sense of what would be fulfilling and what would not be fulfilling. So I learned a ton in the corporate world. I learned a whole lot about marketing and made some great connections, even met the mentor who would eventually lead me to the Lord. But every day I was like, I'm just doing a job. I'm benefiting some other company's bottom line, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was just, I could just tell I needed something different. And so I switched over into where I became a teacher and a coach. I knew I needed that one-on-one ability to pour in and invest in people. And then a few years into that is when I decided I needed to go back to counseling, to go back to grad school again to get that counseling degree. And so I tell people I'm a glutton for punishment. I should have a doctorate by now, but instead I have a master's. But people just kept coming to me with issues that I was honored that they would come to me with, but I knew deep down I didn't have the training to really give them really strong guidance or any true wise counsel. So it came from a place of lack of fulfillment and just sheer necessity.
I'm always curious about the story when someone comes to the Lord later in life. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of share that conversion story? Where were you? How did you know it was time? And then how did you, I would imagine, right, in most cases, when we make that kind of transformation, you have to leave part of yourself behind to pick up that new identity in Christ, as 2 Corinthians tells us, right? Like, what did that look like in your life? How did that story kind of develop? I know that you're really vulnerable on the internet. And so, how did you get there?
Yeah, the semi-short version, and ask whatever follow-up question you want, but I'll keep it relatively brief so that I don't go on a big sermon. But I grew up in church, so I knew all the right answers. I kind of had this picture of God that I always knew he was there. I never questioned his existence, but I just thought he was distant, and I thought he was ready to throw a lightning bolt at me whenever I sinned. And so that wrong picture of him caused me to rebel. And long story short, through different rejections and different things in my teenage years, I started feeling like I want to feel like I'm a somebody, like I'm a true man. And unfortunately, I chose the hookup culture as the way to make myself feel that. And it made me feel that in the moment. But then after each time, I would just sink right back down and a little further down, deeper each time. So I was just digging a hole, or, in therapy, Christian therapy world, we would call it a stronghold. But I just kept in that cycle. And eventually I just got sick of myself and sick of my bad habits and all the sludge that the hookup culture had left in me. And I had tried other ways of stopping, because even before I started following Jesus, I tried stopping this whole thing, but I couldn't do it with the tools that I was trying. And so I remember I had started going back to church, and it was actually one of Andy Stanley's churches at the time. And he had a sermon on the Lord's Prayer. And specifically, it was the line in the Lord's Prayer that says, "Your will be done." And he hung out on that line, and he basically said, look, this is a really hard thing to pray and actually mean it. We recite the Lord's Prayer a lot, but do we actually mean all the stuff that's really being said in it? And he said, maybe this line might be the hardest one, or for the hardest one for a lot of people. And I was like, yeah, I don't want God's will. So, I'm in church and everything, but I don't want his will. I'm just here to check the box, just like I was growing up. But I also realized maybe this is my only way out, because I tried everything else. And so, he said, it's okay to wrestle with God about this. He already knows that you don't want his will. So you may as well tell him and just be honest. And then at least there's a foundation of communication, of honesty, instead of just pretending like neither one of y'all even are saying that you don't want, the whole charade was just getting me nowhere and gets everybody nowhere. So I go home that afternoon after church, and I remember I literally got down on my knees, because again, I was sick of myself and knew something had to change, and I was basically out of other options. And it was like I had this death grip on my life of control. And I didn't just all of a sudden just say, all right, Jesus, take over. I don't know anybody that's ever actually done that. I think a lot of people kind of claim that looking back and make it more dramatic, but I've never seen anybody actually do it. But what I did in that moment, I said, all right, Lord, help me to want your will, because I don't want it.
Yeah.
And I said, I would like to want your will. I want to want your will, but I don't. And it was like I took like one little pinky off of my death grip of control. And in that moment, I felt some sort of like a spark or a little candle light up in my chest. It wasn't anything dramatic. I didn't like fall on the floor and start speaking in tongues. It was it was just something that was alive in there now was not alive right before that moment. And I remember standing up. I was like, huh, something feels different. I can't really put my finger on it, but something feels different. And then from there on out, I've never sinned again. Just kidding.
You said that so casually too. I was like, what? What?
Yep. No, it's been one standing up and falling back down, and standing up and falling back down, and 2 steps forward and 4 steps back. I think somebody told me one time there's a visual picture of when Jesus called Lazarus out of the grave. Lazarus still had his grave wrappings on, and so
his linens, right? Yeah,
his linens, and so. If you picture somebody who's wrapped up in linens, they're not taking big steps. They're just shuffling, and it probably took him forever to actually come out of that tomb. And they said that's actually a picture of spiritual growth. It ain't gonna be pretty. It's gonna be smelly, and the progress is gonna be a whole lot slower than you probably want it to be. But that's how it is in this life, and that's definitely how my progress has been. Because there's still stuff that I'm trying to get better at and work through and overcome. I have also, God's brought me a long way as well.
One of the things I appreciate about you is that in the Christian counseling world, there's a little bit of sometimes lack of clinical practices, right? Mm-hmm. Like sometimes I think we just say like, name it and claim it kind of stuff just gets a little dangerous, right? Like in terms of if you're wrestling with real problems like you were, mm-hmm. So if you think back to that moment in your life, and then you put on your clinical hat, how do you mesh those two parts of your story together?
Yeah, it's one that's always, I'm comfortable with there being tension, because the part of me that knows what God is capable of, I know that he is absolutely capable of giving us the zap, so to speak, of like just healing whatever it is in the moment. Now, for whatever reason, he doesn't do that very often. And more often, it looks like that slow, gradual process that I described. And I also found out in grad school, because I went to a school that I purposely wanted, a grad school that integrated scripture and science. I knew that a lot of the schools that were scripture only were not really going to be complete, and definitely didn't want something that was only science. Through grad school, they taught me that all truth is God's truth. So, of course, whatever's in scripture is true. And then there's a whole lot of things that are true that are not in scripture, but they still came from God. I mean, the stuff that you have to know about the heart, if you're a heart doctor or heart surgeon, that stuff is true, but God didn't put that in the Bible, but he designed it, and so therefore the truth is right there. So I realized, okay, well, the same thing would work in the brain, is that he didn't tell us every single thing about the brain we would need to know in scripture, but there are connections between the science about the brain and what he says in scripture. And it's so fun to see the science a lot of times catch up to what scripture's been saying all along. So for me, I'm good with the tension. I love working with a non-believer, and I don't force anything on them. I just ask them questions, and I want them to examine things like their worldview and what kind of spiritual beliefs that they want to adopt. Because that's complete. For anybody is going to be incomplete if they ignore the spiritual aspect of themselves. But my favorite is when they start as a non-believer, and they also then through the meetings they realize, like, okay, something's missing, and I've tried everything else, so now what? I'm like, well, I don't know. What do you think? Because as a therapist, you can't be, well, the answer is Jesus, But I've also found they know the answer is Jesus.
Yeah, that's right.
Just they got to drop their own defenses.
One of the things that's so fascinating about your work and about your presence in your little corner of the world is that there aren't many single dudes on the internet who are also sharing their faith and are out there posting on Instagram regularly, right? So you have, to almost 275,000 followers on Insta. You put reels out all the time. You're really good about it. It's really engaging stuff.
Thank you.
And I love the way that you work all of that. Your marketing background has served you well in that regard. Thanks. But in light of the story you just told about the hookup culture, and you lift weights all the time, you're not an ugly dude by any means, right? Like, I can't imagine what's happening in your DMs on a pretty regular basis. I know this is kind of, I promise I'm getting to a point, right? Like, I think that there are a lot of successful people who are tempted regularly.
Right.
How do you protect your heart from the not so Christian parts of the internet?
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I'm gonna have to give it a couple of seconds of thought here, because I think the habits that I had already built before I started posting are what I keep leaning on. And one of those habits is whenever I'm tempted with anything, if I'm aware that I'm being tempted, because that's always big. If so many times I'm not even aware that I'm walking down that road, but if I'm aware of it, my habit is, what need am I really trying to meet? So this could be any sin, but let's take the sexual one. Of course, I acknowledge that, yeah, there's a need for physical pleasure, and then along with that, there's a need for connection, there's a need for validation, to feel like the real man. And so I give myself enough space to kind of zoom out from that and say, all right, well, how do I want to meet those needs? Because those are good needs. God put those needs in us on purpose. It's just the enemy comes in and tries to give us counterfeits to actually meet them. So that's one habit, is zooming out, like, what am I really trying to meet here? And usually, for me at least, because of the reps I've done, that's enough to zap me out of it. But then other times, I know, like, I have other guys in my life that I've told them, look, you have full access to everything about me. If you tell me to do something, I'll do it. If you tell me to not do something, I won't do it. And I don't tell every guy in my life that they have that access.
Sure.
There's 3 or 4 that have earned that place where not only will I do basically whatever they tell me, but I'll also report to them if I've really blown it, or if I'm on the way to blowing it. So it starts internally, because if you only have accountability, eventually you're going to go around it or blast through it. But that internal habit that I already had, and then the external accountability, at least off the top of my head, those are probably the main 2 areas.
Let's say that you were sitting across from a leader who hasn't quite built a very strong internal habit yet. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you recommend as kind of the first couple of steps of, like, hey, this is how you can build that internal habit to keep you in a place that honors your values and hopefully honors the Lord?
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And I try to keep things pretty simple, that you can always go deeper and get into all the weeds. But generally speaking, somebody has to have a vision for the direction they're trying to get. They don't necessarily have to have a clear, like, 5-year plan or anything like that, because I'm not sure if that's...
For example, what's your vision?
Yeah, so eventually I would like to do enough good... I would like to help enough people along the way to have the opportunity to start a version of, like, a Young Life ranch. Not under the brand Young Life, but the type of thing that they do. But I would like to make it for people in their teens and 20s who they just need to take a few months out of life and just get their life back on track. So they would need physical adventure, they would need some counseling, they would need some spiritual, but they would need to stay 3 to 6 months. So eventually that's where I would like to get. I don't have this specific roadmap exactly for how that's going to happen, because God's going to have to do it. But yeah, that's at least my kind of, at least from an earthly perspective, that's my North Star. And so then I realized, all right, well, I gotta be consistent toward that direction. And the only way I'm going to be consistent toward that direction is to make sure my decisions keep lining up with that direction. And what I learned a long time ago was that I live in my head so much, and a lot of leaders that I've met live in their heads so much, and we tend to just cut ourselves off from the neck down. And the fancy word for it is we intellectualize everything. So like you got so many issues you're trying to solve, and people that need a piece of your time, and it's just easy to just block out any kind of stuff that's happening in your body and your nervous system just to keep on going and be productive. And that serves people for a while. It can actually take them a pretty far direction, but then eventually something's going to crash. I mean, it might be as catastrophic as like a nervous breakdown or something, or it might just be like burnout. And what I learned is I got to start integrating my thoughts with my body, because I was sitting with a therapist one time, and this was early on in my own journey. Like even early on as a rookie therapist, I thought it was all about the brain. I wasn't paying attention to the body. And I had this aha moment with him. He said something. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And I had this habit of, I would always have a notebook by me in our sessions. And I like grabbed the notebook and started to write down the insight that had hit me. And he goes, stop it. I said, what? He goes, you have to feel something. You keep writing stuff down and keeping it in your head, and you're just trying to avoid actually feeling something. Let the stuff sink in. So, and I was like, dang, he just yelled at me, but I like it. And so I realized I've got to let stuff actually sink in and feel what's going on in there. And then if I can at least have a sense of what's going on with me physically, then I can have a whole lot better ability to know when I'm straying off of the path, and then boom, what do I need to do to fix it? That's the repetition for me. If I'm living in my head, I'm gonna be taken off the path before I even realize it. But now that I'm pretty physically aware of what my body's trying to tell me, I can course correct a lot quicker. Long answer to a short question.
No, I'm here for the long answer. This is the whole reason why we have the long form format. I love it.
That's right.
Listen, one of my favorite things that you do on the internet is you put up a red box that says therapist response incoming, and then you stitch it. I think that's the right term. Stitch it to an existing reel of something that might be moving all over the internet. First of all, it's marketing genius. And I love your responses, and I like watching you watch the response, because the eye rolls or the feelings, like you can start to see it bubble up on your face. What has it been like editorializing comments on the internet? Because the internet is not known for being a nice place, and Christians especially are not always nice people on the internet. What has that experience taught you about opinions, about thick skin, about all that is involved in that?
Yes, indeed. Now I'm so impervious to any kind of a trolling comment or an insult, but early on it hurt. Like my first few videos, I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing. I literally was just trying to help. I had no real plan. It was like early on in COVID. So I was like, you know what? People are struggling. Let me see if I can like say some stuff on a video that might be helpful. So I'm terrible on camera. The way that I'm talking is not working. And so, but I'm still putting it out there. And by the way, I leave those up there now to this day because I at least want to see the growth. Not that I'm some masterful orator right now.
You're pretty good. You're pretty good. Don't sell yourself short. I won't stand for it. You're good.
Well, thank you. So I leave those awkward cringe videos up just to show that, like, okay, I've gotten a little bit better. But anyway, that early on, when I tell people that try to get into social media, is like, all right, you think you want one of your videos to go viral, and yeah, that's going to give you a nice little adrenaline rush for a few minutes. And then the trolls are coming, because any video that goes even somewhat viral, you're going to get somebody that's got basically nothing better to do and has got a whole lot of pain pent up, and that pain is going to come out into your comment section. Even if you have the best of intentions, you're just trying to, like, if you're trying to feed the hungry in Africa, somebody's going to get on your viral video and tell you why you're messing up or why you're terrible. And so the first couple comments, any way you could think to insult me, they would do it. The way that I look, the way that I sound, the things that I'm saying.
I've scrolled through the comment section.
Yeah.
It's a scary place.
Yeah, exactly. So at first it was like, dang, that really hurts. And then I started realizing, how much pain must they be in to then dump that on a complete stranger? And so instead of letting their words affect me so much, really I had to switch the meaning. I switched the perspective. Is like, this doesn't really mean much about me. Maybe there's some fair critiques in there, but the way they're saying it's not helpful. And so I thought, well, I kind of feel more sorry for them because of the misery they must be in, because whatever's in us is going to come out.
That's right.
Especially behind the bravery of the keyboard. So, but now I kind of look at it like it's kind of funny. Like, here they are again. It's just this constant thing. And then also from a marketing perspective, I'm like, hey, thanks. You're boosting my engagement.
You're just increasing that engagement. I know some leaders out there who wrestle with imposter syndrome, with the identity kind of thing that comes with being a leader. Like, I don't want people to look up to me. I don't want people to think I'm perfect. I don't really want to offend people. And yet in the work that you do, all of those things, like you are offending some people with your content, right? You're putting yourself out there in an authentic way. I know you to be a really humble and transparent guy, especially with the people you're close to. What would you say is the first start for someone who really wants to overcome the barrier of like, I don't feel like I belong here? You mentioned earlier just shipping it, right? Like just putting it out there. But like, what if that person is just dealing with some real angstiness about just don't feel like I'm a air quote leader?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would question if this was a one-on-one conversation between me and that person, I would ask them, when you say you don't feel like a leader, what words are attached to leader for you? Because usually leader comes with connotations like I feel like I've got to be good enough or perfect, or all the different kind of more what I would call core beliefs. And I can't generalize for everybody, but a lot of times what I find with guys like that, with that imposter syndrome, who also have the leadership traits, is that it's often a fear that maybe I'm not good enough and I don't want that to get exposed, or maybe I think I might be good enough, but I'm afraid of the success and then the expectations that would come with it after that. So I would try to figure out maybe like which direction do they tend to lean on that. And if it's more of the kind of afraid they're not perfect or afraid they're not good enough side, I have a friend who had a genius idea one time. He's also a therapist. He told one of his clients who's a business leader, he said, look, tomorrow morning, I want you to purposely spill something on your nice white shirt, and I don't want you to clean it off. I just want you to go through the day with it like that. And don't even like acknowledge it. If somebody wants to bring it up, tell them that I just spilled something. Oh, well, and just make it like no big deal. Just brush it off. And I love that because it's like this, it's a little kind of fun way to practice showing your imperfections. Because if we just show that we've got it all together and everything's good, nobody can relate to that because we all know how messed up we are on the inside. Mm-hmm. And so if we encounter somebody who doesn't seem to really have any struggles, then it's not even a respect thing. It's I don't know, it's this weird distance thing of like, they seem perfect, but like they probably aren't. So I don't know if I can trust them. But if you can be vulnerable, and I don't mean like overshare, but just show some of your flaws in a fun kind of way, then you'll be amazed at how people will trust you and follow you and really just want to be around you because they see themselves in you.
That's so good. I think that we underestimate how much strength comes from our weakness, and just that process. One of the things that you have really positioned yourself as is a guy's therapist, right? And so you're really good at talking to guys, and that's a particular passion place for me from my time in the Army, and just a lot of the executive coaching I do now is with dudes. Let's solve all of their problems today.
All right, deal.
Why do you think so many guys still have such trepidation about talking to someone for help, whether that be a counselor or a coach or a pastor, or even just sharing their stuff with a friend? Part
of it is our fault as therapists. Right now in therapy culture, there's a lot of navel gazing and over focus on your feelings and how are you doing today? And then let's talk about your past traumas and the people who hurt you. And then that seems to be like, for a lot of therapists, that's all there is. And those elements, they need to be part of a bigger process. So yes, figure out how you're feeling. Yes, figure out what are your past events that might have caused you some sort of pain or whatever in the past. And yeah, are there people attached to those moments of pain? Sure, all that's important. It just also, it has to be part of the bigger picture of like, okay, and now what? So like, in your pain, can you grow through it? Because so many therapists, I think and I'm sure I've been guilty of this at times without even realizing it, we can just kind of have somebody sit with their pain and really talk through what they went through and never encourage them to like, okay, now let's build your strength. Let's build like a mental backbone to show people like, oh yeah, you can get through tough stuff. And then if you get through the tough stuff, not only you become stronger, but you are able to help somebody who's going to go through the same thing. And so I think guys, at least right now, they see a lot of that therapy culture online. They're like, why would I want any part of that? In fact, I did a video probably a week or two ago about why I think men don't want to go to therapy and why I think they don't want to go to church. It's just this overemphasis on feelings. And trust me, feelings are important, but I don't know. We're not wired for feelings first. Feelings are a great soldier, but they make really bad generals. But then I think there's just a way that guys are wired. We're wired for action. We're wired to solve problems, to keep pushing, and which those are fantastic traits. I think sometimes we only stay in that gear only, and we forget we have to kind of gear back down and figure out, all right, what needs to be recalibrated, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be rested. Like if you're doing curls all the time and you never rest your biceps are not going to get bigger because you're constantly tearing them down. So if guys are in just like go, go, go mode all the time and achieve and all that good stuff, but they never actually pull back and rest and start to do a little self-examination, and obviously part of that comes with asking for help, then we're just going to deplete ourselves and eventually blow up our life. But yeah, I think the therapy culture and just the good things that we're wired for sometimes get taken too far.
Let's say that you're talking to a parent of a teenager, right? So let's say that you got a son who's like 11, 12, and I want to raise him to be masculine and weird.
Yes.
What's the number one key?
Masculine and not weird.
You know what I mean? You know exactly what I'm talking about though, right? Like I don't want someone to come in and be a jerk. I don't want him to be, I don't want, I don't approve. I want someone who's got their heart guarded for Christ and also masculine, but not sleeping with people, but not like doing all, not, drinking and drugging like that. Like, man, like I want him to be able to be on the internet, but not be stuck in a porn cycle, right? Like there's all of these traps out there.
Yep. And
especially for dudes, right? Because we're hard-headed, I think, a little bit more so than most. Like you said, we're just not wired for like, sometimes I think in a lot of young men, especially that indicator of like, this could be a bad decision. We just plow right through it. Oh, right. So that could be the Holy Spirit, or that could be, so what do you think? Masculine, not weird.
Three things immediately come to mind. Number one, you or whoever the dad is, you've got to be masculine and not weird, because whatever you model is probably what they're going to go to, even if they're not trying to. But then also surround them as best you can with other men who are masculine and not weird. And then the biggest thing that they need specifically as far as action points for them as a kid, they have to have responsibility. They have to have something regular that they're being dependent on, that they have to come through in order to make something happen. Preferably it's with like a person or an animal or something in that realm of like, if I don't do this person or this animal, nobody else is going to do it. So they got to learn like I can handle tough things, but also I'm needed in this world. And you start with little kind of morsel size responsibilities, and then you grow it even bigger, because eventually they'll start to see like, man, this coming through is actually like pretty fulfilling. It's a whole lot better than, scrolling on TikTok or, the party culture that's out there. I mean, it'll still be a temptation, but at least they'll have an experience in their mind of knowing, all right, this stuff is short-term and temporary, but the stuff where I've been able to where I've been able to pour into something bigger than myself, that's the real joy or happiness that people keep chasing after.
That's so good. So good. So I got to ask you 1,000 more questions, but in light of two things, I know you're going to come back on because you have a book coming out.
Love it. Yeah.
When's that book due out?
Not till February, late February. So
I know, it's great. That's why you're going to come back on and talk about the book specifically.
Appreciate it.
But until then, where can people find your podcasts, connect with you? If they want to bring you in to speak, how can they do all those things? Where is the best place to learn all things?
All things Trey. It's this crazy new invention called a website.
A website. Tell us more about that.
So
is that on the interwebs?
That is allegedly out there somewhere on the InstaFace or the Snapchat or something. But yeah, ruggedcounseling.com is the website. Or if you're already on a social media platform, just search for either Rugged Counseling or Trey Tucker, and you will find more of this ugly mug than you probably want to deal with.
Okay, last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question, except I get to invite you to go back in time, give yourself one piece of advice, but I get to name the season of life that you're in.
Ooh, okay.
I want to take you back to your very first day as a counselor.
Huh.
You've gone through all that school. You're somewhat of a newer Jesus follower. You've made that transition. You're kind of leaning in. Mm-hmm. You're leaning into this kind of new calling that God has you on. Mm. If you could sit knee to knee with that younger version of Trey, hold his hands, look him in the eye, and give him one piece of advice about the journey he's going to go on, what are you going to tell him?
Man, I love this. 2 words come to mind, and that is talk more, which is opposite of how therapists usually are. But I was so nervous on my first day, and I didn't want to mess up and screw up the client in front of me. And I was just locked up. I was like, if I can just get him to keep talking, then everything will be fine. And so if I could come back now as the older version of me and say, no, talk more. You actually have something to offer. You have plenty of experience and plenty of wisdom. Share it. And then you'll find, this is me talking to the younger me, if you'll talk a little bit more, you'll find that they're going to start opening up more too, because they'll trust you, they'll relate to your stories. And it took me probably a year to really figure that out as a therapist. I was definitely more on the just stay on the quiet side and let them talk. And it's still probably, I don't know, 70% of the time the client is talking. That's how it needs to be in therapy. But it used to be like 90 or 95%. So I think just having that belief in myself that I could add some value with my words earlier on would have helped.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think that there are a lot of leaders who need to hear that and can respond in kind. So, Trey, thank you so much for being a friend and a new friend and just somebody who I have a ton of respect for, and just thank you for your generosity today and what you do to make the internet a little bit of a better place.
Tony, you're awesome, man. You ask great questions. I'm grateful to be connected with you.
I can't wait to see what God does next.
Yes, sir.
I told you guys, what a great conversation. I absolutely love Trey. I love his heart. And here is the 3 and 5, 3 practical takeaways in 5 minutes or less. Number 1, as a leader, you need someone to talk to. You need somebody. You need a person. You need a thing, right? You need a place to dump the emotion. So find your person. Meet with them regularly. Don't give up meeting, as some are in the habit of doing. All right, so number 1, find your person. Number 2, don't be afraid to step out in faith. If you're an executive or an entrepreneur, you already know this is true. But let me just remind you, the greatest fruit is out on a limb. You got to step out in faith. You got to do the thing, even when it's scary, even when it's time to pivot. You have to be willing to step out. And number 3, be authentic about what's eating you up. A lot of feelings that are strong, they're emotional, they're powerful, and sometimes we just try to stuff them in. But if we want to lead with authenticity, if we want to build vulnerability-based trust, we have to do some of the things that Trey talked about today. We have to be willing to share who we are. All right, so meet with somebody, get out on a limb, share your feelings. 3 practical takeaways in 5 minutes or less. As always, podcast fam, so thankful for you. If there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to let me know. Also, if you are thinking about 2026, now is the time to get into the bold ones. We're doing stuff every single month to lean into Christian growth, to what that looks like, to the connections. So go to follow2leadcoaching.com and click on the bold ones. Until next week, remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.